Autism is on the rise. As you can see, in 1995, the incidence of autism was 1 out of 1,000 kids. In 2016, it rose to 1 out of 54 children. And this is a study from 2018 in the US. The overall ASD, meaning autism, prevalence was 23 per 1,000 children, 1 in 44 children. What's going on? They tell us it's genetic, but do genes really change in just 25 years? You may have heard that there could be a connection between the bacteria in the guts of our children and neurological problems such as autism. Is there a connection there, and specifically, do yeast have to do with that in some way? Because our children carry the yeast in their guts everywhere they go. How do yeast affect our children? Let's start. Welcome to the Wellness Messiah podcast. I'm your host, Rimon. You're a loving parent, a responsible parent, and you want to do the best for your children. And the best gift for our children is a fully developed, healthy body and brain. The brains of our children will affect their future, learning abilities or disabilities, IQ, and EQ, emotional intelligence. All of these are going to be affected by the brains of our children. And the first 5 years are the most crucial time. As you can see, by the time our children become 5, 90% of their brain volume is developed. So these 5 years, together with the time in the womb, are the most critical time in the development of the brain of our children. Brain development and gut microbiome. What is the gut microbiome? It is the collective microorganisms in the digestive system, specifically in our child's, but also ours as well. 100 trillion of them, mostly bacteria, are sitting on the walls of the gut. They weigh 3 pounds. Heavy. If you're losing weight after taking antibiotics, now you know what you have lost. And we carry those microorganisms everywhere we go. We just like a large containers of microorganisms and bacteria. Musical chairs. Musical chairs. Do you know this game when we played as children? When you have empty chairs and the music played out, and when the music stops, all the kids need to take a chair. And the kid who did not take a chair was left out and couldn't sit and was out of the game. And the same game happens in the gut. Every bacteria or microorganism takes a chair inside of our gut. It sits there on the walls of the gut on this long tube and share our food as it sits there. Once a microorganism, good or bad, takes its place, it's not easy to remove it, especially if we continue to feed it. Would you give up your chair easily if you had free food? We would have to kill you first. The same with bacteria. Nature knows this very well, which is why the babies receive the mother's microbiome at birth, right before the first sip of milk. Nature wants to make sure the microbiome takes its place in the musical chairs game before every potential contamination that could enter the baby's body, which is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, either of the mother or the baby, the musical chairs themselves are now up for grabs. This is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, the musical chairs of the good microbiome are now up for grabs. And there is a specific type of microorganism that is very happy with antibiotics. Can you guess who it is? The yeast, whom the antibiotics don't harm at all, giving them empty chairs to take. In fact, the first antibiotic, penicillin, which is a derivative we're still using today in antibiotics, was developed by the family of the yeast, the fungi, which explains why the antibiotics doesn't affect them. Nobody wants to hurt their family. And what do the yeast do and make in our gut? They make alcohol out of sugar or carbs. That's how we make beer and wine. We give the yeast carbs, for example, to produce beer, and sugar when we produce wine. This alcohol production happens in our gut too. Then you hear about syndromes like this one, drunk without drinking, a case of auto-brewery syndrome. Yeast producing alcohol inside of our bodies from grains and sugar. And some people who probably have leaky gut of some sort, They get the alcohol entering their blood and they get drunk without drinking a single glass of alcohol. Imagine that. Alcohol doesn't help the baby's brain. It prevents the good bacteria from recovering after antibiotics. And we know that because we use too alcohol to kill or slow down the growth of bacteria. In addition, alcohol is a neurotoxin. It hurts the brain development of the baby, which is why we don't want to drink alcohol during pregnancy. Now, without the good microbiome suppressed by the yeast, other bad germs can join the party. And they love sugar too. Let's talk about mind control. Have you found it difficult to control the diet of your child? What about your diet? These bad germs and yeast sitting in the gut make our children crave sweets, bread, and grains, which they, the yeast and the germs, really love to eat. They sit on the chair waiting to be served. This is a study that shows that, I'm quoting, early life influence can prime the infant gut microbiome and brain for food addiction, which might be further reinforced by increased antibiotic usage and dietary patterns throughout adulthood. So they sit on the gut and they control the addictions of our children. So if you wonder why your child is attracted to food that are not healthy for them, not nourishing for them, now you know why. So after taking antibiotics, our children's diet, and the mother's diet as well, exacerbate this cycle and make sure the microbiome won't be able to recover from the antibiotics. This is what happens. Antibiotics kill the good bacteria but not the yeast, and they also open the door for the musical chairs for other bad bacteria. Yeasts take their seat in the musical chairs and produce alcohol that prevents good bacteria from growing. From there, our children crave sugar and grains without the nourishment of soluble fiber. I'm going to cover this in a moment. The gut is malnourished, the brain lacks growth signal from the good bacteria in the gut, and the toxin protection of the baby is gone. The baby's brain development is hurt in the crucial years. Lower IQ, lower EQ, learning disorders, attention deficits, and also autism. The next section, bringing back the good microbiome. We want to give the good microbiome the food they like and the yeast doesn't like. You know what it is? What does the good microbiome loves to eat? Soluble fiber. The best soluble fiber comes from the cruciferous family, the cabbage family. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, collard, watercress, radishes, and the rest of them. Low on sugar and high on soluble fiber, which means these foods give the good bacteria a big, huge advantage in the musical chairs in the gut. This is why traditional fermented vegetables, for example sauerkraut, which was very common in Europe, are based on these specific veggies. This is what the good bacteria like to eat. What about fiber in whole grains? Despite its good marketing, this fiber is insoluble and won't feed the good microbiome. But its carb content will feed the yeast and the bed bugs, so this food won't help the cause. Soluble fiber, though, is not enough. We also must bring back the good bacteria. We must reintroduce them to the gut.